And good evening, everyone, to the Barre Beat podcast, live from Main Street, Barre, Vermont. Tonight with us, we have Miss Alice Farrell. Alice, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm good, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. And, of course, we always have the lovely Raylene.
Good evening. I'm super excited to have Alice. She has not been in the studio with us for a very long time.
Pre-flood.
Yeah,
Right.
Pre-flood.
Yep, pre-flood.
So I'm actually super excited to have her with us.
I'm hoping to see her more often on Wednesday nights.
Exactly, because she's gonna.
But that still
Kill it
didn't mean
soon.
that I didn't walk by and look in the windows in the last 4 months.
Right. Watching what was happening. Yeah.
So just want to let folks know what we're doing tonight. Alice had asked to come on the Barre Beat because she wants to be able to let people know who she is, what she believes. And, this is obviously we're going to have questions for you. I'm going to open it up to people on the chat for them to ask questions. So anybody that's listening, please pop in your question. Don't be a jerk.
Right. That's the rule.
Because I'm just not going to answer or ask a jerk question. So we're gonna just try to just get get people to see who you are, and have them make the decision of who they want to vote for. Vote for Alice. Obviously, I really
Right.
gotta be careful.
For school board.
Right.
For school board. So just want folks to know that. And with that, the first question that I'm going to ask is, why are you running? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm going to reverse those, and I'm going to tell you about myself, and then I'm going to tell you why I'm running.
That's perfectly fine.
I was a long time in education, 33 years in education. Part of that outside of education, public service, volunteerism, and it's just part of me to be part of a school system, and that's what it is. It's a system, it's an organization, and I can bring a lot of that institutional knowledge and that history to my community, which is now Barrytown and has been Barrytown for the last 13 years. And I think that that's very important to have that type of information assisting everyone in making decisions, in setting direction, and being organized. And that's what I am as far as education goes. I am incredibly organized, I'm incredibly focused, and incredibly disciplined in making sure that our educational system works for everyone and for the community. So that's my background. The fact that I was a special education teacher, I have been a K-12 principal. Let me tell you about being a K-12 principal
Right.
in a 3-story building before elevators. But anyway, that was a thrill. But anyhow, to bring that and be able to assist is my reason for wanting to be back on the school board, because there are things that from my time on the Barrytown board, Barrytown School Board, the BUUSD, there are things that are not done that I think that are very important that need to be completed, and I can assist with that.
Nice. So folks that are listening, once again, I just want to remind you, drop a question that you may have for Alice. Also, click, do a little happy emoji and stuff like that. Interact. And the reason why is because it bumps the metrics, the Facebook gods.
Right.
It helps.
And then more
helps
people
us
will
with
see
that.
it.
And more people will see it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also click share while you are watching. So please click share. That being said, you did mention some of your history as a school board member. Can you let us know what is your history as a school board member, your experience and your resume
Right.
for
I
school
came
board?
to the school board in kind of an indirect route. After I retired from the Agency of Education here in Vermont, where I was the State Director of Special Education, it was just the time that Act 46 was getting rolling in the communities. And Mr. Pandolfo, who was then superintendent, had an advertisement that he was looking for people to assist with the Act 46 commission at that time, which all school districts throughout Vermont had to have. Because I had been kind of inside on that whole Act 46 business, the preparation, the going through the legislation, and then the finalization of it, I thought I could bring something to the Act 46 Commission, and I did be accepted to be on that committee. So I worked through that with the Act 46 representing Barrytown. We went 3 times to the State Board of Education, pleading our case for the Barre Union to stay as a supervisory union with 3 schools rather than be combined into one single district. We went through 3 different votes on that in Barrytown, and each time the citizens of Barrytown rejected Act 46, but still the State Board of Education determined that we should be merged. So we were merged. And then from that, I ran for the Barre Unified School District Board, was elected, and was on the board until my recent unsuccessful campaign a year ago. But as I said, that doesn't frustrate me at all. What does frustrate me is wanting to get things done that need to be done to organize this now unified district. You have to let the wounds of the past go and think about what the future is as a unified district, what it means for our communities, what it means for our students, what it means for our contribution to the state of Vermont, and to go forward with that and be organized as a unified district.
So, you know, I know one of the key issues that are going to be facing Barrytown voters is, quite frankly, the budget issues. You know, that's it's raining out.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a very motivating thing to go to the polls because of it. We currently are looking at, for a $200,000 house, somewhere I think around $400 for tax increases. So, and the comment that I have to make about that is, you know, we as taxpayers and people that are homeowners have to make that decision as to whether or not they can afford that $400 bill.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if you're struggling to make the current payments, even $35 would be more than what you're able to make, and it could have a significant impact on specifically, you know, income sensitive folks. And I think that I think the lag time for that is 1 year, I believe.
It is, yeah.
And that's when it's going to really hit those low income or income sensitive voters. And one of I can't remember who said it, but somebody did make that comment that they will start to tax lower the income sensitive
They'll
folks.
change the requirements for income sensitivity as to where it is now. I think it's now up somewhere around $140,000 a year,
Right.
and you're still eligible for income sensitivity. But if they change that, that could affect a lot of people. And my attitude toward that is that schools are supposed to bring people out of poverty. They're not supposed to put people into it. And so if you suddenly have an area where people have to sell their houses and move away because they can't pay the taxes, that's really a very difficult pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm. And I think that we kind of talked about that last year. I know that you and I had a couple of conversations that even if they change the income sensitivity and all of those things change, it won't change the perception that people have of where we're at right now with
Right.
what we've got.
Right.
It's not going to change.
That if people believe they are overtaxed,
Yeah.
that's the perception, and and then they look to see where the overtaxing is coming from. And there are two places: school taxes and town taxes. And that's where folks begin to have some uneasy feelings about what they're being told they have to pay for taxes.
Right. With that, one of the things that is a conversation is those increase in costs are to absorb the ESSER fund positions, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that right there.
I have some very significant thoughts about that, and my first belief is that promises made should be promises kept.
Yeah.
And if we were told as a board, and I was sitting on the board at the time, that the ESSER positions were going to go away when the funding went away, and now they're rolled into the general fund, that's something that is very difficult to deal with. And what it means is that the community is now being responsible for positions that were supposed to assist students coming out of COVID. There was considerable fallback during the COVID time when the kids were out of school. Those positions were supposed to build up, to reinforce, to assist students to get back on track, and then do their good and go away. And they're not going away. And that concerns me. That why have these been baked into the activities of teaching when they were intended to be support positions?
Temporary.
Temporaries,
Yes. Temporary support positions.
And the thing with the ESSER funds also, the ESSER funds weren't free money. The ESSER funds came from the federal government, so it's left pocket, right pocket. It's all taxpayer money, and appreciate that. But I just was kind of taken aback when I saw that those were being rolled into the general fund, because that is a huge increase in staff and costs.
That's not necessarily needed.
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily needed, but what the situation is, you have to begin to adjust your delivery of instruction so that where you had lots of supports over here from the ESSER funds, you take that support that was done, see how the kids have benefited, and how that can be spread among the staff that we do have. Now, there'll be staff that'll say, oh my God, I can't do mine anymore. I do enough. I do all this. I do that. Well, what were you doing before? Before those folks were brought into the picture. And how can we do that again? Do we need to look of clustering students differently? Do we need to look about different materials? Do we need to look about different schedules? All of those things. And I'm not sure, because I haven't heard it. I'm not sure that that's being done. Instead, we're just adding staff because we need staff. But that's not for me as a board member to decide. What it is for me as a board member is to ask the right questions as to why is this happening? Where is the growth from the individuals that were added as support people? Where did we go? If a student was at a 3.5 reading level in the 4th grade, and they went to a 4.2 reading level, well, we're showing growth.
Right. We're showing that actually did something
did
and may have
something.
been worth the
and
money.
how can we continue that with what we're offering in the classroom?
But that's not what's happening.
Yes, so it's not for me to determine that, but it is for me and the board to ask those right questions about what is being done to benefit our students. And it's always about questions from the board, because the board needs to make sure, the board as a whole, and I speak of that as the board of a whole, needs to make sure that the school is doing its job of educating students. I'm very determined about that.
So one of the
thankfully.
difficult issues with educating children these days are behavioral problems. And most people in the education field will say that the reason why they're having a difficult time educating children are those behavioral problems. Children with there's certain terms, special needs, right?
Well, special needs and just general kids who are not identified. And special needs is has been my field. But the situation is that also what needs to be looked at is schools, to truly benefit, need to develop a culture of learning so that when kids hit the door, when the students hit the door, they know that their job when they walk in there during the day is to learn. And
Not be on their phones, not
yes,
playing, not doing this and
and
that.
this is what's to be expected. You come to your classroom, you respect your peers, you respect your teachers, and build that culture, that community of learning. And instead of sorting and sifting students by their particular needs, have everybody aware of the fact that this is where you come to learn. This is your job. This is what we're doing, and build that. And that, according to a very telling study that was done, and I'm not one for quoting studies, but I like this one, in Australia, and it was done over 40 years. So it's not like it was something that they just made up yesterday, is that is the most important piece of any school function, is to build that culture of learning, that culture of community, and have the kids know that this is what we do here. And very clear. And that really impels students towards success. And so the success in its own right, again, to go back, if you have a student who's struggling with reading and they master something in reading, that success is going to
move them forward to other
move
things.
them forward so that they're not frustrated. And it could be little steps. It's not big, huge things, but little steps, so that the success in and of itself emboldens them to move on and not think about pinching their neighbor or yelling at a teacher or something like that, because they are experiencing success in the culture of learning. And I'm really adamant about that.
So behaviorals, I know that they're certainly, last year we brought forth, it was a combined effort between Terry and I to bring forth a behavioral ad hoc committee, which was well thought out. I actually sought out Sarah Pregent's help on that particular ad hoc committee, and Terry and I presented it to the board, and it failed. Were you able to watch that?
Yeah, I
or
followed that.
You followed that? Just asking what your opinions are about that.
Well, you got to have the data. That's really important. If you're going to start any kind of anything to study anything, you have to have data and foundational and background information as to why you're going to do it, because otherwise it can just be an exercise in futility. And what you want to do is bring that forth, find out why things are happening, and then how are you going to solve the issue? Because otherwise you could just be a solution in search of a problem. and you have to have it the other way around. You have to have a problem in search of a solution. So look at that. If that's what the plan was for your behavioral committee, to bring that forth, who are you going to bring in as your consultants? I know you hate the word consultants, Michael, but
I do.
there are people out there who, when they look at strings of data, when they look at information, can give a board or a school system some really exacting information about what's happening, why it's happening, and how you can solve it. So if you're willing to move into that, you have to be able to do the work, get the information, find the solution, and then carry it out. Because that has always been a weakness in education, not just here in this state or any state. It has always been that you get halfway into a program and say, oh, let's go this way instead. Well, finish what you started. See it through, see how it's working, and then go back and make your adjustments rather than abandoning it. So if that's going to be your behavioral committee and your behavioral observations, then I would say go for it, and I would be in favor of that. But make sure that the plan, the foundation, the mission, the vision, all of that stuff that they talk about, the textbook stuff that they talk about, is in place.
Nice. So how do you, as a board member, see yourself facilitating an increase in our academic performance in our children?
Oh,
because I know you love the academics.
You hit the nerve. I was heartbroken when the discussion of abandoning the curriculum committee came into play. That curriculum instruction is the baseline of everything that goes on in schools. And there are some very specific things that committee can do to talk with administration, to talk with teachers even, talk with parents and families, to see how our school can best move along the students, all students, students with special needs, the middle ground group, the high flyers. And I think they need to have a calendar, they need to have objectives, they need to have goals, and go to it. Grab it with both hands and keep going. Because something that has continually concerned me is that I keep hearing, well, we're 5 years out, we're 3 years out, we're 2 years out on this particular issue.
Why not tomorrow out?
Yeah,
Right,
well,
yeah.
well, that. But what always impressed me is, all right, if we're 5 years out on a reading program, there are students that, when you're starting that program, if they're in the 5th grade, by the time you get the reading program organized, they're going to be in the 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Every year that is wasted on a student is 3 years. That it takes 3 years to make it up.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
put
pretty
your
incredible.
shoulder to the wheel and let's do it. And the idea of saying, well, we have to reteach the teachers. Teachers are pretty smart.
Yeah.
Teachers have a good, solid background. And if you say we're going to adjust, for example, our reading program, going to go from a whole language program to a phonics base or a mixed use language base, literary, phonics, the whole thing, teachers catch on fast.
Mm-hmm.
They're good people. I know them, not just here, but all over. And they can do that. So the idea that we need to spend a whole lot of time coaching and teaching teachers, let teachers do it.
Right, let them do their job.
Yeah, and they'll be fine. But I really worry about these extended time limits as to whether or not they're really doing any good when kids are living in a world right now that moves so quickly that they can't afford to be waiting 5 years to get the reading program organized.
Is that kind of where things are with even I hear this talked about a lot, Common Core.
Well, Common Core has kind of, yeah.
Is that kind of going away?
Yeah, Common Core was an interesting phenomenon that, strangely enough, not to get into too much of it, but the gentleman who is the immediate past president of the college board, which is the SATs, he was sort of this academic genius who created this whole thing and sold it to the Governors Association, and the Governors Association said, oh, wow, yeah, right, we can have everybody in the United States learning the same thing at the same time, and it just
did not work.
It didn't work out.
Right.
So
I think to talk about that, it boils down to local control or federal and state control, and I'm just going to state this. I'm a firm believer that local control is the way to go, and I'm going to ask you what your thoughts. Should we have more local control or more state and federal?
Well, communities know best. Communities know who they are, what they need to know, where they're going, and if that is local control within communities, then that's what needs to be done. Because that has always been the path of education in the United States is local control. So maybe you didn't, going all the way back, John Adams, that far back, maybe you didn't learn the same thing in Quincy, Massachusetts that you learned in Falmouth, but you learned. And that's what was important for the time, and it's still important for the time here, is that you shouldn't be foisting things on communities, and I take this from the federal government level, is you shouldn't be foisting things on communities that they really don't need. Students need to know how to read, write, and compute, and that's really important. And then you do all the application of it. Why do they need to read, write, and compute? Where will it take them? Into the workforce, into post-secondary, into the military, to the moon, wherever it might be. But you need to concentrate on making sure that kids have basic skills and then what is applicable to the local community.
Folks, just want to remind you, you can ask questions. Please do so in the chat so that I can read them off to Alice. We haven't had any questions yet.
No, and we have a lot of people tuned in.
We have a lot of people tuned in.
And so I'm really surprised that we have gotten no questions at all yet, because this is, it's a tough subject, not just because of the budget, but because a lot of parents feel as though their kids aren't getting the education that they need right now for the kind of money that's being spent. So I'm super surprised that we're not hearing more.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they'll think about it.
Yeah.
And they can. I have a Facebook page, and I have a Gmail account, which is Alice S. Farrell for Berrytown at gmail.com. And anybody who has a question, send it in. I'll answer. And I firmly believe that any question is a good question, and I'll answer it legitimately.
Mm-hmm.
So, regarding your Facebook page, I do see that that's the one that you're on a tractor, correct?
Oh, yes. It's not a tractor. It's a gator.
Yeah.
It's a gator. And I just posted the Facebook page for you so that people can find that. Click on it. Not right now because you're watching the Barre Beat.
Right.
But afterwards, click on it and share Alice's page and ask her questions there.
Yep.
And she will gladly answer those questions. Generally speaking, asking questions after Barre Beat has aired live, it gets a little difficult to get those questions answered. So certainly a better tact is to go to her page and ask her those questions. I was going to ask another question, and I completely forgot
I know that.
what it was.
Well, let's talk about that. We've also discussed before your thoughts as far as when we talk about budgets and money and surplus and how things are being done. I think that we had a pretty good conversation about the fact that that people had to really look at the different places. The money wasn't being spent wisely. And so to really look at, because we got into a huge discussion about somebody that said their math book was
Oh, yes.
da 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 old, and so I just heard that same comment the other day was, why when this math book was, why is there a surplus, or why is the budget this much when my kid still has this, and we've talked about that before, right. That it is a matter of each department spending their money like they should spend it instead of holding on to it,
having the money to spend and spending it wisely. And let me assure you that I have been told that the calculus books that were 20 years old with missing pages and broken bindings and the names of parents who use those math books of current students, they have been replaced.
Yeah.
But that's very important to be looking at that, because that's all part of the tools of learning.
Mm-hmm.
And the tools of learning have changed a bit because of the internet and the online and more disposables than hard copy textbooks, but they're there. And if a student has a cruddy book, it's not very inspiring.
Right.
So you need to have that. So you need to keep up with that.
And it should be current. You want what you're currently
right
doing.
An old book with lots of tape on the binding and your mother's name in it, certainly is not very inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
So that has to be looked at. So spend that money appropriately. Make sure, this is the other thing that has been reported over the years to various board members, is that there are teachers whose rooms never get warm during the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And they and the kids are cold in the room. And so why is that? We're facilities management. Make sure people are comfortable in this culture of learning. And that includes being warm when the temperature outside is 10 below. So, all of that. And so getting the job done, being observant of what's going on, good management. And management is the responsibility of central administration. And central administration has to be watching the shop and making sure that those reports are being responded to, that the questions of supplies, materials, facilities management, budgeting, all of that is done appropriately.
Right.
And
It's
done
literally
right.
every piece that affects the
And
education.
And every penny should go into making sure that students are learning and getting what they need. That's the bottom line. And again, all students. The idea, the statement of students get what they need has predominantly been attached to special education students with IEPs, but it applies to all students.
Everyone.
Everybody needs to get what they need. We don't want kids sitting out in the hallway doing ditto sheets because they're ahead of the game and they finished their work.
Right, and they have nothing else to do. Right.
No, we don't want that. So that's no more ditto sheets. Even though a lot of people can't appreciate this, but the ditto sheet, I don't know if you guys ever got them, but then the material that they used to print those blue ditto sheets was an alcohol based, and everybody in the room would be sniffing the page. And I remember the kids just going, ooh, and they're sniffing the ditto sheets.
Oh my goodness, I don't even know what they are.
No,
I don't either.
Oh,
I didn't want to say it.
They were horrible. But they were the next step up from carbon paper, and you'd do one sheet of whatever it was that you were doing, and then you'd stick it onto this drum with a handle, and it was an alcohol-based ink in there, and you literally turn the handle, and 30 sheets would slide through and be printed from what you wrote on the original,
On the one sheet.
on the one master copy. And of course, the papers all got wet with the alcohol-based ink and everything, and that's why if a teacher was coming back in with newly run ditto sheets, it was like,
Right. Everybody wanted those.
everybody
Yeah.
wanted to sniff the ditto sheets. That's a little educational history there. Yes.
That's funny.
Well, we do have our first question, which is coming from Judy Copping. Thank you, Judy, for posting that. She said that she was a little confused by Article 3 and 4, and I will read them.
Okay.
It was she would like to. Oh, she said that it was explained to her, but let's explain it to other folks.
Okay.
So it wasn't a question. I misread that. So let's just read that. So Article 3, and that is, shall the voters of the Barre Unified Union School District approve the school board to expend $58,880. Oh, 88,000. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Get your zeros
Wait a
there,
minute.
Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah.
58 million.
Yeah.
Million. Hold up. I don't have the screen on me. Million.
Yeah.
58,880,532, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that the proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $11,795.
No, get your zeros straight.
What?
11,000?
11.
You're talking about per student. Okay.
Per long-term weighted average daily membership per pupil spending.
Yeah.
So let's go with that first. And do you want to make some comments on that?
Yes. Yes. The 58 million is the total budget for everything. And that's this running the schools, buying the books, paying the teachers, paying the staff, paying the administration, transportation, all of those things that people refer to as the line by line. And so that's the total. I've always been confused about how, not only under the supervisory union, but also now, that budget is prepared. It's somewhat unusual to come to the board and say, here's what we spent last year. We spent $1 last year on running our school district. What's going to be the upper limit for this year? Are we going to spend 3% more? Are we going to spend 5% more? Give me a limit, and then we'll create a budget. That's a rather unique premise for creating a budget, but it's the way it's done here. And rather than saying to the administration, to each school principal, what do you need for your school? What do you directors need for your departments? And then looking at that all together and saying, here's what we think we need, and then coming to the board and having a discussion about that. Some people call that zero-based budgeting. Some people have other names for it, but basically that's a rather routine way of creating a budget. So I've always had concerns about, okay, let's play with a percentage and then let's fill in the gaps. So you need what you need to run the schools. There's no question about that. You have to pay the staff. You have to buy the heat. You have to mow the lawns. You have to paint and have the kids being safe and all that sort of stuff. So you need the money to run the schools. How you get to that final amount is very important to me. And I think that that's something that we maybe need to look at as we proceed through the new way of financing schools.
Right. Because do they really need that much?
Yeah, that's the question. Because if you say you need $58 million, but you only end up spending $52 million, now have you overtaxed the community by $7 million? Or $6 million, and so that's a question. So the budget process is what they call it. That I think needs some looking at. As far as this weighted students and this new configuration of figuring out how many students you need and what the per pupil cost is, I won't say it's beyond me, but it certainly is frustrating, because if you have 2,200 students, how do you suddenly come up with 3,800 students? Now, I understand the whole process
Right.
of saying, well, a kindergartner, because they're new students, teachers spend more time with them, they need more supplies, et cetera, et cetera. Same with students that are experiencing particular needs, whether it's temporary, that they need some extra coaching, some extra tutoring in math during a particular lesson. If they haven't learned the nines times table, then they need to be coached in getting up on the nines times tables with that. So that's an extra. But I think that they kind of went overboard with this weighting business and how to organize that as a and then say that that's what the cost is per student. I would tend to say, here's our budget. Here's what we need for curriculum and instruction. Here's what we need for instruction. Here's what we need for facilities. Here's what we need for other pieces, and figure out what a cost per student from that is, rather than all this hocus pocus of weighted students.
Yeah. As many know, the long-term weighted average daily membership per pupil spending is kind of a bugaboo for me.
It is. It's totally
huge for
almost
me.
incomprehensible.
Yeah. And I'll just say, just for some educational purposes for folks, that LTWADM weighting of 11,795 is based on the formula that the state of Vermont has created, taking into account socioeconomic issues and trying to meet those social emotional needs because of those socioeconomic issues. The Barre City and BUUSD in general certainly has some lower socioeconomic. We have some significant socioeconomic issues in our community for certain, which is the reason why we have higher. We actually, based on Act 8, or not Act, but the Senate Bill 825, I believe, it came to light that we actually didn't benefit from Act 127 like we were told that we were, because we qualified for that 3-cent decrease in the tax rate. So it's a really confusing kabuki dance. And
now try to explain that not only to parents and families that have students in school,
Right.
but go out there to the man on the street and say, stand across the street at Nelson's and ask somebody going in if they understand average daily long-term membership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the problem is that, individuals use, the long-term weighted average daily membership
Yes.
To show that, to create a narrative that we're underfunding our schools because we're lower in that number than other communities. But when you
We're actually
look at
probably
it,
overfunded in a lot of circumstances.
well, so when you take the standard, philosophy about average cost per student, you would take the budget, which although it's on the ballot as 58 million, technically we spend somewhere around what? How much do you know? I think it's like 72.
I was going to say 72 because that's
Yeah.
what I recall reading that it's somewhere around 72.
Right, $72 million. And you take that number and then you divide it by our student population, which is going down. It is. We're losing, which I do want to get back to that as well.
Yeah.
But we're losing student counts, and that comes up somewhere around 30 to 32,000. I can't remember the exact numbers. I would highly recommend people go to my commentary in the Times Argus, which really gives a rundown of what LTWADM is and what I would call, the per pupil spending, the
Right.
average per pupil spending, actual average. That being said, let's talk about the decreasing in our student body while increasing our costs. Can you tell how do you feel as a board member you could impact that in a positive way? Wow, that's a loaded question.
Right, but I think no, but there is an answer to it, and the answer is that when you're looking at working with your administration on curriculum and instruction issues, and that's basically what it is. And I hate to be repetitive, but that's the core of what we're doing here. Everyone is curriculum and instruction so that students can learn instead of just pouring more money into it. Look at what can be rearranged, how we can make some changes in the delivery of instruction to make sure that every student gets what he or she needs in our schools, and that we're doing it in an economical way. And it can be done because there are samples from literally all over the world of how you can be economical but still have your students being successful. And that's what I would recommend. I can't say that we need to adopt the Malaysian model or the Saskatoon model or something like that, but they're out there, and look at those and see how that is happening and create these circles of learning that don't cost a whole lot, but you do see great improvements in instruction and improvements in student outcomes.
So I want to point out Nancy had posted in here, and she knows more about the budget than I do, hands down. She said 70 million is about what the spending is.
Yeah.
So, and this is a pretty simple question. A lot of districts have those I call them the dark money because you don't see them, and I know I upset a lot of people about that, but I mean, you don't see them, so it's kind of like dark money that's going into our school system. In other communities, they actually report that and put it into their budget. I'm a big fan of transparency. If you were on the board, would you support a move to add those into the budget as part of that transparency aspect of things?
I'm going to focus on the transparency piece.
Okay.
Transparency is truth, transparency, whatever you want to call it. It is vital. The expectation of any board and any quasi-governmental operation, which is what schools are, is to be fully transparent, fully truthful. Nothing hidden, nothing under the table, no dark money. if it's there, put it out there, let the communities know, depend upon the community as an understanding and viable partner in education. And that's extremely important, because as soon as you start hiding stuff, you lose your community support. And if you lose your community support, you might as well pack your bags and move to Timbuktu.
Right.
So, I was going to say Tennessee, but I already lived in Tennessee for a little while, so I wouldn't want to go back there.
Right.
But anyway, welcome to Vermont, anyone from Tennessee. But anyhow, but the situation is that's the way it is. You have to be fully transparent at the board level, at the administrative level, at the building level. Fully transparent.
So you had discussed the curriculum side of things earlier, and I want to pivot back to that because you had mentioned, the different styles in teaching nowadays and the different things that are out there. There was a study done that showed that children are in cognitive decline due to screen time.
Yes.
Both computers, cell phones, even Chromebooks, and all of that is contributing to our cognitive decline of our children. And that's a real concern for me, because at the end of the day, when these children are coming out of school, eventually, they're going to be making decisions that affect me. And when we're talking about children with cognitive decline because of those issues, what are your thoughts about how we could stem the tide on that issue?
Well, it's always time and place is what it is. That what is appropriate for learning in the building. If you look at the way libraries in many cases are going, the idea of having rooms full of books isn't there anymore, that you have to really look online, and so you're looking at screen time for that. But it's a time and place issue of how kids learn, what they learn, what they need to learn. And the other piece of that, and I think I read that study as well, is that the speed that cell phones work really quickly, and the platforms, the PCs or the Chromebooks, everything's going very quickly, where there really isn't a whole lot of time for a young brain to take it all in, absorb it, apply it, whatever. So that's the question of time and place. How much is the right amount? What is too much? And that's a question that I believe every school individually has to answer. And knowing that outside of school, kids are bombarded with screen time. They literally, if you look at some of the kids riding on school buses, they get in the bus, they sit down, they turn on the cell phone, whatever it might be, and boo, 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 boo. They're doing that. So
right, they're not communicating with each other or anything else anymore. They're just on their phone immediately.
Right.
And
so what is enough? What is too much? And how can we best as adults, because we have to remember that we are the adults in the room, what can we do best as adults to facilitate kids getting out in the sunlight, getting out and tossing the ball around with their friends, and not sitting in a corner playing on their cell phones? So we need to encourage and activate those support systems that get the kids away from the screen time, so that they are able to have their brains, literally while they're playing soccer, have their brains processing what they learned during the day. So it's brain function is what it is.
Yeah. Well, we are pushing up against an hour, so I would, if you have any final thoughts, or Raylene, do you have any additional questions that you would like to ask?
I really don't, just because, I think you just you have it, and I'm voting for you, and I want, and I'm very verbal and vocal about that, and I can be, so I am, and I would just be really super happy and proud if you were back there, because I feel like we need you there. We need you in the seat, and we need you. And I often say it, and not a lot of people agree, but I believe that sometimes to go forward, you have to take 20 steps back.
Right.
And this is one of those sometimes that we really need to go back a little bit, revisit things, look at how things are going right now, and know that we could learn a lot.
Yeah, and I always enjoy my hour with you guys, whatever it is, whether it's in this case where there is a definitive outcome that I would like to be reelected to the school board, or whether it's just sometimes on Barre Beat just shooting the breeze and seeing what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
And the piece is structure, organization, focus. If you've watched the board over the last couple of years, they don't have that. It's seat of the pants management. We got to get away from that, and I think I can really be a strong advocate for building what we need to have. Because there's another little piece, and I'm not going to go on about it, but beginning in July of 2025, the state, by statute, is requiring that boards have quality standards in place for themselves. And I was honored to be able to serve on that task force that created those school board quality standards. And that was within the last 2 years. And that's extremely important because boards are going to be being evaluated now on how they are doing their job.
Good.
And so that's important, and I can bring that to the board. I can bring that to my community, and it can expand throughout the entire BUUSD. I love what I do. It's, as I say, it's part of my DNA. You take out education, and you have all that's left are dogs and cats. It's dogs and cats and children.
Well, I certainly thank you, and I will tell you that since you mentioned dogs and cats, Leah misses you.
Oh, we love Leah.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Alice took care of Leah when she was younger because I didn't want to leave her by herself, and Alice took her in and during the day while I was working and let her play with your
Reggie.
older dog.
Reggie.
And I think they enjoyed each other very much.
We did.
And I definitely thank you for that. Do you have any final comments and final hurrahs?
It's just right at this point, if you have not voted already, it is extremely important. Your vote is your voice. 2 things: you need to protect your ballot because that is your vote, and you need to use it. You need to vote. Whether you haven't sent in your mail ballot, go up to town hall and vote at town hall, or we'll see you at Berrytown Middle Elementary School on March 5th. Bright and early. Hope it's warm.
Me too. I do too.
And it's I will say it's really important at this moment. Do not mail your ballots in.
Right.
And
It's past that.
people will bring them in for you. I mean, I'm sure if you want to
Right.
get
If
your
you need a
ballot
ride
in,
to the
Right.
polls,
And if you-
whatever.
you can bring it. But if you have a friend that you know that you trust, they can bring it to the polls as well, or they could drop it in. I'm assuming that
There are drop boxes at town hall.
So there's that opportunity. But if you mail it in, there's a high chance at this moment that it won't make it for the voting day.
Right.
So definitely bring it in.
And we
and
do
vote.
have drivers standing by in case you need
Absolutely. I would give anybody a ride also.
Either to-
Anybody that wanted to
either
go
to
to the
town
polls.
hall or to school on election day. Just ring us up and we'll get you there.
All right. Well, thank you very much,
Well,
Alice,
thank
for
you,
coming
Michael.
in.
And Raylene. It's always a treat.
It is. It is. So we do want to thank you for joining us on the Barre Beat. Want to also thank our viewers for joining us on the Barre Beat. Drop a like. A little smiley face.
And share the episode to help
share
Alice
it.
get the word out, and so that people can learn more about Alice. And do that for we'll be talking with Shelley Stevens, a city candidate, on Friday evening at 8 p.m. And so really share these episodes and get so that these guys can get their word out a little more, and people know what's happening.
It's important. It's really important. Be knowledgeable about candidates. Know who support local control. Who, people that are not people that are just going to roll over and accept whatever it is. People that are going to fight hard for our children, fight hard for our taxpayers. It makes a difference when you vote. And if you don't know who you're going to vote for, I'm sure you can, like I said, you can reach out to Alice. I dropped the link down there, and I will drop it again for those that are listening. Make sure that you click on her link, ask her questions, see what she's been posting. She has been posting, so...
Yes.
With that, again, want to thank you for coming to the Barre Beat, and Raylene, always. And want to say thank you to those watching and live from, I almost said National Life.
No, we are live from Fly on the Wall
Fly on
Productions,
the
right
Wall
here at
Productions.
185 North Main Street in Barre.
And,
Directly across from our sponsor, Nelson Ace Hardware.
Yep. All right. With that, you guys have a wonderful evening. And
Thank you very much.
March 5th, this Tuesday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Barrytown High School is where you vote in Barrytown. And when you vote
Barrytown
in the
Elementary.
city-
Elementary.
Did I say high school?
You did.
Barry
Wishful
Elementary
thinking.
School. Sorry, BTEMS.
Correct.
And for those that are living in the city, it's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Barre Auditorium. Make sure you come and vote early, and don't miss the opportunity that's given to us by our country. So, all right. Well, have a great night, and we wish you well.